right, folks, welcome to another edition of Outspoken. I'm Dan Sileo, and what a special weekend it was for the National Football League. The Pro Football Hall of Fame inducted some of the greatest names in the history of the sport, and what a way to celebrate the past as we get ready for the upcoming season for 2026. That thing never ceases to amaze when you see legendary people going into the Hall of Fame like a Luke Kuechly. All the players that went in, and Drew Brees' speech was absolutely sensational, talking about his passion when it came to the New Orleans Saints. All the things that went on there, when you saw Hurricane Katrina and all the people that really fought for their lives. During that time, Drew Brees gave you a heartfelt speech. How about Roger Craig? And Roger Craig's journey on trying to get to the Hall of Fame, playing with those legendary players like Joe Montana, Adam Vinatieri. You had the great Larry Fitzgerald. Tremendous class. That class never, ever, ever, ever ceases to amaze me. Every time you get to hear those Hall of Fame speeches, they are just absolutely legendary. What a great weekend. As we said, Major League Baseball, college football also is right around the corner, but some storylines. Listen, I can't really sit here and cover the WNBA any longer with any seriousness. It's really a reality show now. You know, I saw the other night where Sophie Cunningham got mugged, and now we're talking about, again, white privilege. We're now sitting down, and actually the commissioner is going to have a roundtable on determining really what a woman is. I mean, how do you take this serious? Dudes do not belong in chick sports. Plain and simple. How are we even here? What's the debate on this? Women's sports should be protected. Title IX, all the things that the WNBA has been fighting for, and women's sports on how to be covered like a mainstream sport. And they're turning it into a reality show. You can't take the WNBA serious. You're talking about, again, an opportunity for people to sit there and look at your sport and try to cover it like a mainstream sport. How in God's name do you sit there and going to have a round table on what a woman is? How are we here? Look, I'm going to say it one more time to people here. Look, I think identity politics in all sports stinks. And I think that everyone should have a bite of the apple. This has nothing to do with what's right and wrong when it comes to transgender or when it comes to homosexuals. This has nothing to do with that. This has to do with sports. And every time sports has politics put into it, it clouds it. Look, we want to be entertained because if we want a nightmare, all we have to do is tune on the news each and every single day. And we can see our political nightmares in front of us. People want to get away from that. They don't come here to listen to me talk about politics. They come here to watch great sports people, great talks on topics, on sports. That's why they come here. They come here for sports. And anytime that we put identity politics or politics, it clouds that. Look, there's a reason that you could put 65,000 fans in a stadium and no one cares what your political identity is. No one cares what your sexual identity is. You're rooting on your favorite team. You're sitting there with your kids, with your fans, and you're watching your favorite team. If it's the New York Giants, you don't care about the person sitting next to you, if they're a Republican or Democrat or independent or gay or not gay. What does that have to do with anything? Nothing. It really does cloud it. And when you're talking WNBA and these stupid topics, dude, you got a great product. The WNBA is a really good product. I watch it now. You know, if it wasn't for Caitlin Clark being and bringing me to your sport, like Larry Bird brought many and thousands of white viewers to the NBA back in the early 1980s. There's no difference. There is no difference. Race sells. Take a look at Fox Sports or CNN. They sell it every day. It is one of the biggest businesses in our sports right now and in our culture right now when it comes to broadcasting. And when you're watching what the WNBA is doing, it makes no sense. You have a chance to do something special. You know what that is? Become the fifth sport. and become the fifth sport. It's crazy. Unfortunately, you're not getting it. You're run by imbeciles. It's either intentional or guess what? You're incompetent. All right. So the Hall of Fame class was spectacular, as I just mentioned. Drew Brees, Larry Fitzgerald, Luke Kuechly, Adam Vinatieri, and Roger Craig, all going into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Two names missing, though. Of course, that was Belichick and Robert Kraft, the winningest coach and the winningest owner in pro football history. How are you not first ballot Hall of Famers? Again, ideology and politics came into this. All the things that went on there with Robert Kraft being friends with Trump or with Brady being friends with Trump. You had the scandals that were also involved during that time in that 20-year run, which was the greatest run in NFL history. How can you call yourself? It's like baseball. How can baseball call itself a Hall of Fame if you don't have Barry Bonds or Roger Clemens in it? If you don't have those two names in your Hall of Fame, again, you can't tell the story of baseball without Barry Bonds and without Roger Clemens. How can you tell the story? Same thing here with pro football. Do you know that since Robert Kraft has owned that football team, when he went and brought that team from Victor Kiam, and he has put all these legendary people in that front office, whether it be Bill Parcells, Drew Bledsoe, went to Super Bowl, whether it's Brady and Belichick, went to numerous Super Bowls, and now we just see what Robert Kraft just did with Drake May and with Mike Vrabel, went to another Super Bowl. 11 Super Bowls since that man has owned the football team. If every other year, just about, Robert Kraft and his Patriots have been involved since 1995 with the Super Bowl, and you're not in the Hall of Fame, and you put Jerry Jones in the Hall of Fame before Robert Kraft? Last I checked, I know I went to Miami, folks, 6 championships beats 3. Okay? I mean, 6 titles, 3 titles for Jerry Jones. And you're talking about an organization that is the best, and it's a gold standard right now on how to win. Putting quality people into the front office, putting quality people on the sidelines, drafting, putting great folks in those organizations. That's why the Patriots win. And Robert Kraft is the best owner in pro football. He may not be the best owner in all of sports like Stan Kroenke, but in pro football, there's nobody better than Robert Kraft. And then you have Belichick. Hey, look, I get it. People are now taking shots at Belichick because of what's going on at UNC. How can a guy with 35 victories in the postseason, how can a guy with 6 Super Bowl titles, let's not take away the fact he's also arguably the greatest defensive coordinator in the history of the National Football League. His game plans are synonymous with winning championships with those New York Giant teams. And by the way, for the record, Parcells has never won a title without Belichick on the sidelines. They're in Canton, those game plans. How are those two guys not in Pro Football's Hall of Fame? Again, you can't tell the story of pro football without Robert Kraft and without Bill Belichick. Belichick's the greatest coach in pro football history, and in the Super Bowl era, Robert Kraft is the greatest owner in Super Bowl era. No question about it. All right, our great friends at Morgan & Morgan, they are without a doubt the #1 injury law firm in all of America for a reason. They built this firm over 25 years ago to serve families like you. I tell you about the family all the time in Pennsylvania that was initially offered $650K. They got nearly $30 million in settlement. Or the family in Florida, they got $350,000 offered. They got nearly $12 million in settlement. Go to forthepeople.com/big sales or pound law 529. That's forthepeople.com/big sales or pound law 529. And do me a favor, you tell them Big Sills sent you. We will ask a Hall of Fame voter, Howard Balzer, what he thinks of the class. That's next here on SportsGrid.
I'd be looking to sell Louis Varland at this point just because his success has been great, but I'm also worried about how many more opportunities he's going to have given the dynamic of where the Blue Jays sit in the standings. We've heard some rumors that they may be wanting to trade Jeff Hoffman, and it could open up a lot of opportunities for Louis Varland, but there's also nothing pushing the Blue Jays to continuously have out a great player when they're fighting for nothing when it's all said and done.
Pro Baseball Today, only on SportsGrid.
Class is in session. Today, let's talk about the teaser. A teaser is a multi-leg bet where you shift the point spread in your favor. You get better numbers, but every selection has to win. It doesn't matter what you bet if you don't have the insights. Tune into SportsGrid and get ahead of the class.
The dark days are ahead for the Warriors. And when Curry and Kerr and Draymond all leave, what are we going to be looking at that franchise that has been a mainstay of the NBA, the face of the NBA and NBA playoffs for so long? Where are they going to be? So I see no issue with them bringing Draymond back. Why not? You have one last go at things with the trio that they still have there. But I see this as a very long season.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
Philly had issues elsewhere last year that were on full display in the playoff game against the Niners. They couldn't move the ball all game, and then they got in a 2-minute hurry-up drill, and they walked right down the field. Guys, Tom Brady would do Eagle games. Every single week he'd go, gosh, if they do some hurry-up. And then immediately they'd do some hurry-up, 2-minute warning, and they'd look like a completely different football team.
In-game live, only on SportsGrid.
I love talking football, especially Hall of Fame, with my friend Howard Balzer. If people know, Howard Balzer was one of the very first people with ESPN back in the day that started the NFL draft. And he's there in Canton, Ohio. What a special week and what a special weekend. I mean, seeing the jackets go on the men and then seeing those speeches. Howard Balzer, one of the 50 Hall of Fame voters, is here with us now. And Howard, those speeches never cease to amaze and never cease to deliver, do they?
They usually don't. There's no question. I think one of the things what the Hall of Fame did is they really were getting on guys to make them shorter than they had been. And most time the speeches were short, but you get that outlier, someone like Michael Irvin or whoever, going 30, 35 minutes. And they've kept them anywhere between 12 and 18 minutes over these last few years. And I think in a lot of ways they're better. They're concise, forces guys to get to the point. And they do an excellent job with it. And so it's interesting you mentioned the 50 selectors. 50 is a big number, an important number for me. I just celebrated my 50th anniversary covering pro football, and this is the 37th time I've been in Canton for an enshrinement weekend, and it never gets old. It's tremendous every year when I go there. And of course I do shows for Sirius NFL radio, and we interview so many Hall of Famers over the couple days. And boy, I have to pinch myself and say, don't ever take this for granted for what I'm doing, being here and seeing people and then seeing the events and the gold jackets get put on. And this is something the public doesn't see, Dan, on Friday night at the gold jacket dinner. And one thing that's been changed over the last few years, is that it used to be when they brought the Hall of Famer on the stage, after they walk through this gauntlet of over 100 Hall of Fame players that are there lined up on either side of the stage. And when they introduce a player, he has to walk down. It takes him about 5 minutes a lot of times to get from the back of the line to the stage. But in the past, they'd have the player's presenter come on stage to put the gold jacket on. They changed that a couple of years ago, and they gave each Hall of Famer the choice of another Hall of Famer that they would like to have put the jacket on. And that even makes it more emotional when you see the hugs between Larry Fitzgerald and Chris Carter, who he chose. Larry Fitzgerald was a ball boy for the Vikings back in the day when he was a younger guy and even a little bit in college. And Chris Carter was a player on the Vikings. To see Roger Craig and have Ed DeBartolo Jr. come on stage and the hugs, and after they do that, it's just, you can just feel the emotion in the air. Like you said, it's just special. And I just hope I can just keep doing this for as long as obviously I can.
Boy, I tell you what, I also loved too was watching Breeze in Montana. I thought that was a
Yeah.
great moment watching those two guys talking, and two great legendary players. And Howard, when did they bring it out and put it out into the stadium? Because is that one of the things also that's changed? Because I remember years and years and years ago, it was a smaller type venue. And then all of a sudden they put it in the stadium so that they can get the fan bases. That really has made that situation and that whole entire ceremony grow.
It really has, and many people can envision that, the Hall of Fame museum and the cone at the top, basically. And they used the enshrinement, the Hall of Famers and others. They sit on the front steps of the museum for the enshrinement, and then people who were there, family and media, they'd be sitting on wooden chairs on the grass at little tables, and then the fans would be on the grass, and the trucks coming down Highway 77 in Canton would be honking their horn and all that. I don't remember, Dan, the year that it switched, but as they renovated the stadium tremendously over the years, and then, like you said, they switched it there, and makes it a lot more room for people to be there. A lot more people are able to come, and it's a great venue to have it in. And so, so many things have grown over the first time I was here in 1980, believe it or not. And so many things are different about the Hall of Fame and everything around it. But it's, most of it, obviously, it's all been changed for the better.
Howard, I opened up the show today with Belichick and Kraft. Look, it was a phenomenal class. And one of the major storylines, obviously, was Belichick and Kraft not going in on a first ballot. Your position on that? Did the Hall of Fame, did they miss the boat on that by not having them in? Or do you think, again, that, the process will take care of itself? How did you look at it? Do you think the Hall of Fame missed the boat, Belichick and Kraft not going in the first ballot?
I think what probably happened, and you talk about the process and how the process changed in the last two classes that have gone in, and that made it difficult for what we call the group of five, which includes 3 seniors players, a coach, and a contributor who all get discussed. And in the past, we would vote up or down, yes or no, on each one individually. And if they got 80%, they got in. And you go back and look at the classes prior to 2025, and you can see there were years when there were 7, 8, 9 people going in because of the coaches, the contributors, and the seniors players that went in. Well, then they changed the process, and we don't vote up or down individually. And so you have that group of 5, and all the selectors we're only able to vote for 3 of them. And then to be elected, you have to get the 40%. And now what's happened the last 2 years is that only 1 from the group of 5 has gotten in, and each year that was a seniors player. This year, of course, Roger Craig. Last year, it was Sterling Sharp, and the coaches, 2 other senior players didn't get enough votes. The coach the previous year was Mike Holmgren, and I think Ralph Hay, one of the founders of the NFL, come back in 1920. He was the contributor nominee, and they didn't get enough votes. And so I believe that this was a product of the system because it forces selectors to make a choice when they pick the 3 guys. And some are going to say, hey, like Roger Craig, we wouldn't have had that emotional moment yesterday with Roger Craig if, let's say if Belichick had gotten enough votes or Kraft. And so there's votes split. And I think even more so when you have both Belichick and Kraft from the same team. I'm sure there were votes, there were votes split. And so I think that I'm sure there were some who voted for both. There might have been some who didn't vote for, well, you had to vote for at least 1 senior because you're picking 3. But all of that splits the vote and makes it very hard to get to 40. And I think it's done a disservice, like I said, to the Hall of Fame, that out of that group of 5 that are very, very deserving. And, Roger Craig played his last game 33 years ago. And to put only 1 person from that group of 5,
Howard,
I think diminishes.
Hold it here. We're going to have another segment with you here. I want you to follow up on that. Keep it here on SportsGrid. Man, I love talking Hall of Fame here with one of the Hall of Fame voters. Howard Balzer has been doing this a long time. His first class was 1980, and one of the members of that class was Deacon Jones. Jim Otto, also Miami Hurricane, went in. But you were talking one of the greatest things that you always sent messages during that time, didn't you, when you were Al Davis putting his Raider guys like Marcus Allen in? Because all those guys, well, Marcus Allen, I don't know if he chose him, but a lot of those Raiders in the past chose because, again, they wanted Al Davis into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. But he was really, I mean, another charismatic guy was Al Davis.
Oh, no doubt about it. I always remember his speech for Jim Otto. It was the first time I'd heard the speech. And then I said, man, and it was just, with his Brooklyn accent, and the Raiders, have always played in the greatest games and had the greatest teams. He'd always start his speech that way. And it was just tremendous. I don't know if they picked him because they wanted him in the Hall of Fame. I think they probably picked him, because the one thing about the Raiders, and this continued to this day, how they, take care of their alumni, they invite them to events and all that. And I'm sure Al, they might have just said, we want to keep you in the family here, so it might be good if I'm your presenter. So, but he did a bunch of them, and after that first one, I said, man, I got to come back to this every year. There was a period of time that I missed, and now for 19 years since I've been with Sirius XM NFL Radio, I've been doing these shows on the weekend, and so I haven't missed in the last 19 years. So it's like I said earlier, it's special every year.
Howard, are there any changes you think are coming when it comes to the voting process? Do you think the Hall of Fame is talking and looking at still with some of the ways that maybe they could change that process, maybe to get more guys in and not put you guys in a box?
We're hoping so. Many of the selectors do. From my understanding is there's things being presented to the board of directors, and they might have been presented on Friday at their annual meeting at the during Hall of Fame weekend. And so we could see things. I would think if there's changes, there could be things coming down that we'll find out in the next couple of weeks. And we all hope, that happens. And we'll see. The thing is, at one point when they expanded the seniors being considered to 3, which I'm pretty sure was in 2022, it was said that, we're fine if there's larger classes. Then all of a sudden, a couple of years ago, the feeling was, well, the classes are getting too big. Well, which is it? Which is it? And so I think there's a happy medium there, somewhere. But I think this just overall, last year there were only 4 that were elected overall. This year it's 5. And I think maybe they make them, and the minimum is 1 from the group of 5, and the minimum is 3 from the modern day guys. So you have to have at least 4. But the maximum, I think, is, oh boy, I think it's 8 or 6 or 6, something like that the max can get in. So, but I think if they put the minimum numbers up to 6, yeah, that's the minimum. The minimum, like I'm saying, the minimum is 4, but I think that it would be good to get some more in. If they want to reduce it from 8 or 9 that it's been, you can find ways to do it. But we're all, like I said, we're all hoping there'll be some, tweaks to the system, because it's really changed things the last 2 years, like I said.
Do you think Eli Manning will have one of the tougher times trying to get into the Pro Football Hall of Fame, especially with some of the names that are coming up? Roethlisberger's coming up as well. I mean, are we going to be here a while for Eli Manning, especially with a lot of the names that are coming up? It really doesn't look very good for him getting into the Pro Football Hall of Fame, especially with the current system.
No, I think it's going to be difficult. And, these 2 years that he's been eligible, when we're voting, we have 15 finalists, and it's reduced to 10 before we get to 7. And he hasn't even made the reduction to 10 the last 2 years. Next year, Ben Roethlisberger comes in. Phillip Rivers would have been in this or in this class that we're going to be considering, but by him playing, that gave him another 5 years. But coming down in a few years can be Tom Brady. So yeah, I think it's going to be tough for Eli. And I think people look at it and say it's not enough just to be on 2 Super Bowl winning teams. Your whole body of work is a big part of it. And he was a very good quarterback, but there are some believe that what he did over the course of his entire career didn't rise to a Hall of Fame level.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at his record, I mean, he's won 17-1, 17-1. I mean, the last 10 years of his career, Howard, I mean, they were under 500 as a starting quarterback. And again, like you said, I mean, I get it. The 2 Super Bowl MVPs, the 2 Super Bowls. Jim Plunkett has won 2 Super Bowls, and he also won an MVP. He was a Rookie of the Year back in the day. So, especially like you said, with the way you guys are pinned in right now, boy, I got to tell you, I think it's going to be a really tough putt there. But, hey, I got to tell you, man, always talking, right? It's going to be close.
Yeah, the other thing real quick, when you mentioned the Super Bowl MVPs, he was probably Super Bowl MVP because no one could figure out one guy on the defense that made the difference. Because they won those they were in large part, they were in position to win those Super Bowls.
No doubt, Howard, I appreciate it. Thank you, my friend. Jacob Camenker next. Well, it must be football season because there's a lot of football talk as we get ready for the upcoming 2026 season. The thing that I love the most about the Hall of Fame, it celebrates the past as we get ready and go forward for 2026. And Jacob Camenker here with us. And first and foremost, Jacob, I got to get your takeaway. Those speeches that I just talked with Howard Balzer, who was there in Canton, they never cease to deliver, do they? They always deliver on how their journey and these men's journeys on where they get to those gold jackets. Just a tremendous moment for the NFL.
Absolutely, Dan. You just hear the gratitude all of them have for the people who helped them on their journey. You know, we get poignant moments. We get funny moments from Adam Vinatieri, who was just roasting everyone at the end of his speech. It was a great time. And just, you know, you get like your heart gets full watching that stuff because you're like, these are guys who worked their whole life to play the game of football and they played it at the highest level. And now they're getting these honors. And you just see the joy and like how proud they are in that moment to get that gold jacket. So I thought the entire ceremony, I watched the entirety of it. I thought it was fantastic. And the NFL always does a fantastic job with it. But, you know, this Hall of Fame class especially, it's just 5 really, really great players, 5 very, very great people. So it's just great to see them all enshrined and have their big moment and just, you know, feel the love from all the people that they entertained over all the years.
I thought Cat Williams was going to put the jacket on Vinatieri after that roast. So I was like getting ready for it myself. And I'm like, all good here. How about what Howard Balzer just said about Eli Manning? Do you believe Eli Manning's a Hall of Fame quarterback?
Yeah, so Dan, I think that he has one of the toughest cases to evaluate because you look at those 2 Super Bowl runs with the Giants and, knocking off the undefeated Patriots, that is an iconic moment in NFL history. So you think on that alone, you could say he could hang his hat on that resume and say, hey, I knocked off the undefeated Patriots with this team, and then we beat them again 5 years later. So we have the 2 Super Bowls, the 2 Super Bowl MVPs. But as both of you guys hinted at, his regular season record and the end of his career was rather underwhelming. So, you're going to get a lot of voters and people who look at it and say, well, he got hot twice at the right time. Those teams got hot at the right time. Without those Super Bowls, what is his resume for the Hall of Fame? It falls below some of the other quarterbacks. So I think he's probably going to have a long wait, but I would imagine at some point, those 2 Super Bowls will probably carry him over the finish line. And really, the first one is the most important because those undefeated Patriots were not supposed to be beaten in that game. Eli Manning and the underdog Giants got it done. So I think eventually people are going to look at that historic moment and say, we have to have Eli Manning in because of this. We have to have some of those defenders in because of this. But I do think it's going to be tough for him to get in with just some of the guys coming down the line like Ben Roethlisberger, Tom Brady. It's going to make the path a little bit difficult for Eli.
Let's see if Manning privilege ends up playing a factor in the end of this one day, right here. All right, let's go to another quarterback and go to Lamar Jackson. Look, I've said this before, one of the most gifted athletes I've ever seen play the quarterback position. A couple of years ago, 41 touchdowns. What was it, like 6 picks or something like that? The guy's 1,000-yard rusher. I mean, he's really a unicorn. However, you got to build your legacy in the postseason. What are you expecting with a new head football coach and Lamar this year in Baltimore?
Yeah, Dan, I'm thinking the Ravens are going to be a contender once again. I know they missed the playoffs last year, but they've kind of bolstered their roster a little bit. They added Trey Hendrickson to the defense, and I know Trey Hendrickson's, getting towards the latter stages of his career, but the pass rush for the Ravens was just such a big issue. And if there's one thing that Hendrickson has proven he can do across his career, it's rush the passer. So I think between that and Jesse Minter coming in with that defensive system that he's really enjoyed a lot of success with across all of his stops, I think it's going to raise the floor of the Ravens on that side of the ball and really turn them back into a top-tier defense. Now, the offensive side of the ball, there are still concerns about the pass-catching weapons outside of Zay Flowers. They just gave him a big extension. They still have Mark Andrews, who, is an effective tight end, maybe not what he was at his peak, but still a fine starter. They're trying to fix the offensive line, but they lost Tyler Linderbaum. So I'm a little worried about how the interior line is going to shake up at the center position. Will that impact Lamar Jackson? Will that allow teams to get pressure up the middle, which, Jackson can run away from, but the best way to contain a mobile quarterback is to pressure him up the middle because you're flushing him out to one side or the other. So, there are some holes with this team. They still don't have a proven number 2 receiver, though I've heard good things about Jacoby Lane at their camp. I believe he's a rookie out of USC. So we'll see what happens there. But I think the Ravens are going to contend for a playoff spot. But for them to get to the Super Bowl and make that type of run, Lamar Jackson is going to have to really elevate this offense. And we've seen him do that in the regular season. But to your point, Dan, can he do it in January? That's what's going to decide whether these Ravens can be true contenders.
Just a suggestion. I would hand off the ball to Derrick Henry more in the postseason. Let that moving refrigerator run the football there. Let's go over and stay in the AFC here. Mahomes, are you expecting a bounce-back year in 2026 with Andy Reid and with Patrick Mahomes?
I'm expecting a bounce back to an extent, Dan, but I'm not sure that they're going to be, returning to form as the team to beat in the AFC. I just look at this roster. I have concerns about the offensive line, the right tackle position. We don't really know who's going to end up there. Jalen Moore is the veteran option, but there's been some buzz about undrafted rookie Khalil Benson maybe taking on that role. And, it just worries me that you might have Patrick Mahomes coming off of a significant knee injury and not having the best protection in front of him. So, from that perspective, I'm a little bit worried about the team. I think the signing of Kenneth Walker III was really smart of them because early in the season, they can really lean on him to carry the offense, not put too much pressure on Mahomes as he gets his legs under him. So I think there's a path for this team to be successful, but they just don't have as much depth as they did at their peak. You look at your receiving core, Rashee Rice is there. Very good player, but can he stay on the field? Xavier Worthy, we haven't seen the best out of him yet. Travis Kelce, twilight of his career at this point. Is Patrick Mahomes coming off this injury going to be able to elevate these guys and have someone he can consistently rely on? That's the questions that I have about this team. I think Steve Spagnuolo will get the most out of that defense. I think they'll be competitive. I think they'll be within the division race. But it also wouldn't surprise me if they're kind of hanging around 500 like we've seen a lot early in the season and need a late season run to kind of get back into either the division race or the wild card race. So I don't think it's a foregone conclusion that these Chiefs are going to be a true contender. I think that they're definitely going to be in the playoff mix, but there's enough holes to keep them away from getting another shot at the Lombardi Trophy, even despite the greatness of Mahomes and Andy Reid.
Oh, well, now since you mentioned this, I'm going to play a game with you here. You ready? If you had to win a 60-minute football game, would you take Brady, Belichick, or Mahomes and Reid? Who would you take if you had to win a 60-minute football game?
So trying to answer this as unbiased as possible, Dan. I grew up in New England. I'm from the region, so I'm trying to make the case in my head for Mahomes and Reid. You know, Andy Reid, fantastic offensive coach. Patrick Mahomes, a true playmaker in every sense of the word. He makes throws that no one else could make on the run. So I think you have a strong case that if you're looking for a true playmaker at the position, you would go with that duo. But, you know, call this bias, call this what, you know, growing up in New England will do to you. But I think I would go with Brady and Belichick because you know Belichick is going to coach up the defense, get the best effort out of them possible. And while Brady lacks the same playmaking instincts as Mahomes just because he's not nearly as mobile, his poise in the pocket and ability to orchestrate drives in the clutch is second to none. So I think I would go with Brady and Belichick in this scenario. But Mahomes and Reid, certainly not a bad combination if you're trying to win a game. I just think Brady and Belichick, it's sort of more of a dynamic duo, whereas the other one produces a dynamic offense, but you're not quite as sure what will happen on the other side of the ball.
Man, I'll tell you this too, Jacob. Here's a stat. You ready for this?
Yep.
Every year that they were there in New England, every other year they were in a Super Bowl. I mean, I'm not sure you'll ever see anything like that. Speaking of Boston, it's like Brady and Bill Russell. That's what you have here. We're going to talk some more NFL with Jacob Camenker next and get his thoughts on Kyle Shanahan. We'll do that next here on SportsGrid.
You wouldn't have your ex officiate your wedding.
Do you, Jake? Liar? Cheater? Gaslighter?
So why have anyone but America's largest injury law firm handle your injury case? With over $30 billion recovered for our clients, there's a reason to go big.
Gaslighter, coitus crier, he's got more red flags than a bullfighter's attire.
Morgan & Morgan, America's largest injury law firm.
We are talking pro football here with Jacob Camenker here and getting his thoughts on the upcoming 2026 season. And Kyle Shanahan, man, I'll tell you what, people give him a lot of kudos, Jacob, and they tell me he can design plays and really exotic routes and all that. Is he overrated, in your opinion, for not winning the big game?
I don't know if he's overrated, Dan. I think, he does get a lot of that praise for saying he's one of the best offensive minds in the game. And he always is able to kind of take whatever the 49ers give him on offense and turn it into something successful. I mean, talk about Brock Purdy. He was Mr. Irrelevant, turns into a really good quarterback. We've had Jimmy Garoppolo start for them. And Jimmy Garoppolo, over his years with the 49ers, looked very, very good. So I do think there's a point to this being a quarterback-friendly offense. I've seen Mac Jones find success in it, too, after, he had his share of struggles with the Patriots, though that was partly related to, having Matt Patricia as your offensive coordinator. That's going to happen. But anyway, getting back to Shanahan, I think in the regular season and, in the early stages of the playoffs, his play design can't be beat. And you look at a lot of what they're able to do and why they're able to have consistent success. And I think you could say that's related to Kyle Shanahan. But we've seen in the big game, to your point, they come up short several times. And even the Patriots-Falcons Super Bowl, when he was the offensive coordinator there, the Falcons had that big lead and they sort of abandoned the running game. And that helped the Patriots get back into it. So I do think there's something to be said about Kyle Shanahan. He's a great play caller. He's a great coach. He's a great play designer. But in that big moment, he has not been able to fully show up so far. So I think if you're looking at it solely from that perspective, you could say, yes, he's overrated. But I think if you're, doing a draft of head coaches across the league, I think he'd probably be coming off the board somewhere within the top 5 to 8 picks, just because he can do so much for your offense.
My only criticism was really 2 minutes going into the half and 2 minutes end of the game. That's really kind of been the Andy Reid disease when Andy was in Philly. That, that time management has always been an issue, and a little bit even with Sean McVay, like we saw in that Chicago game this last year here. All right, so the impact of A.J. Brown going to New England will be what, in your opinion?
I think A.J. Brown's going to make a pretty big difference for this team, because you look at what they had last year. They had Stephon Diggs, who had put together a really solid season. Kayshon Boutte had a breakout year. But beyond that, they had a lot of role players who did okay, but, were probably playing outside of the roles that they really want them to be in. Adding Brown and adding Romeo Doubs really adds another element to this receiving core, because Brown can be your guy who's going to both stretch the field and be a high-volume pass catcher. Drake May can rely on him to kind of drive the offense. Romeo Doubs is going to be a really great number 2 receiver, possession guy, just plays a role in that offense, gets open, and kind of operates as a little bit of a security blanket for when Brown can't get open. And then you add Boutte, who's one of the best downfield receivers, to the mix. All of a sudden, your top 3 receivers look great. And then you mix in Pop Douglas as a good slot guy, as a backup, Kyle Williams, young speed receiver. All of a sudden, the Patriots receiving core looks pretty good. And last year, if you looked at their receiving core going into the season, especially before they signed Stephon Diggs, you were saying, how is this team going to be competitive on the offensive side of the ball? So I think the addition of Brown just kind of puts everyone into the role that they need to be in to find success. And I think that's going to be a great thing for Drake May as he looks to make another leap in his 3rd season as the Patriots prepare to face a tougher regular season schedule than what they had last year.
Jacob, and you're not in the camp that you think that Rossini-Vrabel saga that we saw this last season is going to play any factor in this upcoming year, do you? It's the NFL. I mean, they walk by things every single day, and yet I know this is a media topic more than it's a football topic. You don't really believe it's going to have an impact at all in any way. Like I heard the other night on NBC, I was like, my opinion, this is going to have zero impact on that upcoming season. Maybe I'm wrong. Do you think it will?
Yeah, I think there's a possibility it could become a distraction if it continues to linger. But Dan, my thought process is always, once the players get on the field, once the coaches get on the field, their focus is on football. It's on winning the games. And yeah, they're going to get some questions about what's going on off the field, what's been happening, during the offseason. But once the games come around, those guys tend to have a monomaniacal focus on what's going on the field. So I think once they're kind of in the swing of the regular season, that's going to be a forgotten topic among the guys in the locker room. Now, Is it going to be mentioned from time to time? Are there going to be stories still out there about it? Sure. But I think because Vrabel has shown an ability to get this team to focus really well in the past, I don't foresee this being a big issue for the team.
I'm with you. I think Vrabel's a great football coach. I want to ask you one more question about A.J. Brown. If the impact's going to be good in New England, will the impact be negative in Philadelphia not having A.J. Brown there with that Eagle offense?
I think it's possible, Dan, but I think the Eagles did a good job of kind of bolstering the depth of their receiving core, because the issue they've had in the past is they had A.J. Brown, they had Devontae Smith, but they couldn't really find a third receiver to join them and really become a prolific 3-receiver offense. Now, getting rid of Brown, creates some issues, but then they go out and they trade for Dontavian Wicks. They draft Mekhi Lemon, who's going to be an excellent slot separator, a guy, if you get the ball in his hands, he's going to be able to make some plays. So I like the idea of pairing him with Devontae Smith. You have Wicks across from him. You have Hollywood Brown in that receiving core now too, I believe. So you're looking at a 4-man receiving unit that has a lot more depth at the top than the Eagles have had in the past. So, at his peak, is A.J. Brown the best among the receivers that the Eagles had? Sure, but I think that they needed to kind of split with him and do things a little differently in the receiving core. I'm interested to see how Devontae Smith does as the true number 1 receiver there. I think they really need him to operate like that to take pressure off of Lemon in his rookie season. But I don't think that the Eagles are going to be significantly worse off with him. I think you're just going to see Jalen Hurts try to spread the ball around a little more now that he has a greater wealth of options to throw to.
Am I right to say this? And I'm going to put my little bag of money on Justin Herbert, Mike McDaniel, and Jim Harbaugh. I've got Justin Herbert as my preseason favorite for MVP. Would I be off base with that?
I don't think you're too far off base. I think he's a nice kind of value pick option for them, because you look at that Chargers offense, they have a lot of good playmakers, and Mike McDaniel, he has some flaws as a head coach. I didn't always love his game management and everything there, but as an offensive coordinator, he can really, really do a lot of great things. He's going to find ways to get Justin Herbert some easy completions, downfield throws, and Herbert just has such a consistent skill set. He'll be better protected this year with his tackles healthy, so I think you might be onto something there. I think Herbert might end up having his best year ever with Mike McDaniel in tow.
Yeah, well, just make sure that, the crazy guy on the sidelines has his shoes on. Be all good there in Los Angeles. Jacob, thank you. Sileo says next here on SportsGrid. Well, the legendary battle now going on in Cleveland to see who's going to be the starting quarterback for the Browns is underway. And obviously, Deshaun Watson, you've got Dylan Gabriel, and of course, Shedeur Sanders. So Shedeur Sanders was asked a question if he was ever in a quarterback battle. And Shedeur Sanders answered it this way: yeah, I have. Me versus myself. Well, let's put this out there. Well, last time I checked, when you were at Jackson State, your dad was the head football coach. The last I checked, when you went to Colorado, your dad was the head football coach. When have you ever fought for anything? And now you're in a quarterback battle to try to win a starting quarterback job in Cleveland. Personally, I think this is the first time that Shedeur Sanders in his life has had to actually earn a starting position. And this is something that will benefit him if he is the guy. Because remember, the one thing here about an NFL football team, the NFL is looking for starting quarterbacks. And if he's good enough, congratulations, you earned yourself a starting job. Remember, let's go back to the draft of a year ago. Everyone was saying that Shedeur Sanders was a first-round draft choice. Well, you know, the NFL has a way of telling people who you really are. Kid, we think you're a fifth-round draft choice. And this is who you are until otherwise proven. You know, when you look at Tom Brady, the 199th pick in the National Football League draft, when he came out, NFL told you, hey, Brady, this is what the NFL looks at you as, a sixth-round, 199th pick until proven otherwise. Name the quarterbacks. Joe Montana, third-round draft choice out of Notre Dame. You're a third-round quarterback until otherwise proven. You haven't proven anything yet. Now, I get it's Cleveland. That's one of those destinations you go to die when you're starting quarterback. They're in New York with the Jets, and I understand it. Shedeur was ranked 35 out of 35 for veteran quarterbacks based on a poll of executives and coaches. The NFL is telling you exactly who he is. Right now, he is a journeyman-type quarterback. I don't see anything special about Shedeur Sanders except for the fact that he played for his dad. To me, it looks like Shedeur James, like Bronny James here. Fathers that are so great get opportunities to give their kids chances to become professional athletes, I think is great. I've had this question asked me before. Sills, if you were able to get your kid on a professional sports team, would you do it? Of course I would. But again, you got to walk down the yellow brick road yourself, dude. Doors are swung wide open when you're Deion Sanders and when you're LeBron James. But you have to walk down that road, and you have to earn these quarterback starting spots. Look, it's the most coveted job in American sports today is being a starting quarterback in pro football. Everyone knows that. There's no other job in American sports. Nobody knows a bigger job than being a starting quarterback, no matter if it's Cleveland or no matter if it's in New York. And Shedeur Sanders has an opportunity here. Now, I hope he takes and grabs a hold of it and becomes a starting quarterback. I'm rooting for the kid. I am. Again, I don't really root against anybody unless you're a complete tool bag. But here, this will be the first time that he's ever had to earn a job. You know, go back to Colorado. He was one game over 500, was blown out in a bowl game, and had his jersey retired. And Darian Hagan, who was the guy who won the national championship, had to wait until this last offseason to go into the Buffalo's Ring of Honor because it didn't want to make it look so obnoxious when Sanders went in. Sanders was a good football player in college. A great one? Absolutely not. Now he gets the opportunity. And I would say right now, because your last name is Sanders. Let's face it. If his name was Shedeur Brown, would he be given the opportunity to play with the Cleveland Browns? Most likely not. And Dylan Gabriel would be given that opportunity more so. And Dylan Gabriel was actually drafted ahead of him and a better prospect coming out of college than what Shedeur Sanders is. He's a media-made person. And everyone in the media wants the kid to win. I hear, all the time that people are saying, Sills, you're too hard on the kid. No, there's 53 chairs in an NFL locker room. It's the most competitive place I've ever been in my entire life. Nobody cares who your dad is. Nobody cares where you played. Nobody cares about your journey. Those 53 chairs are earned, not given. And it's one of the hardest things to do is win a spot on an NFL roster. There's a reason there's only been 29,000 men ever to play in this game, with 16,000 men alive that have ever played in the National Football League. You have to earn these positions, and you have to earn your starting job. We'll talk some more football with George Kurtz. We'll do that next. Hour 2 here on SportsGrid. Hour number 2 here, and we got George Kurtz here. We're going to talk some pro football, and we will get his take also a little bit on Major League Baseball as well as we get ready for the 2026 season. I've been telling everyone this, George, those Hall of Fame speeches, man, I mean, they never cease to deliver, do they? I mean, hearing the journeys of these men that and how they got to that gold jacket, how they became less than the 1%ers of the 1%ers that make it into the NFL. It's truly a magical weekend.
It is. It's the greatest of the great, right? Which is what the Hall of Fame should be, right? I'm not talking about very good. So that's my part of the Hall of Fame, Dan, in all sports, probably, not just the NFL, but more baseball probably than anything else. It's become the Hall of very good, you know. But I thought the NFL got it right this year. I don't think I have any too many qualms with the people who are in here. But you know, it's also a little weird, Dan, because everybody that got in, I've seen play their whole career. You know, I'm getting older now. You know, when I was younger, I didn't see him, but I heard so many good things about him. But now I've seen Larry Fitzgerald, right? You've seen every game he probably played here. So it's a little different. Well, I'm older than this guy. I'm a lot older than this guy. So it's a little different here when you watch him. But, yeah, it was I thought the NFL got it right this year.
Boy, I'll tell you, and I text Roger Craig, and I played against Roger Craig. And, you know, I sent him a text message, George, you'll love this. Hell, I thought you were already in. Congratulations for you going into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. So, yeah, Roger Craig, long overdue here, no question about it. You know, we had a voter on with us earlier, Howard Balzer, and I asked him about Eli Manning, and he said he thinks Eli Manning's going to have a very tough time getting into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. He thinks with all the guys coming up and the way his career went down the last 10 years, George, you think Eli Manning's a Hall of Fame football player?
Now, whenever I get to this conversation, and once again, any sport here, I am a very tough Hall of Famer. I think the Hall of Fame is for the best of the best of the best. Eli Manning's not the best of the best of the best. All right, he's a good quarterback, won some Super Bowls, and let's face it, Dan, you take those Super Bowls away, we're not having this conversation, right? This is not even a conversation. He didn't win those 2 Super Bowls. But do I think he's a Hall of Famer? No. You're going to put him in against all the other quarterbacks. Where's he going to fall on that list of where you would take Eli Manning? And I'm not knocking him because he was a good quarterback. And I love him off the field, by the way. I think he's funny as all hell on the commercial and stuff like that. So I am an Eli Manning fan. Hate him with the Giants. I'm a Cowboy fan. Do I think he's a Hall of Famer? No, I don't. I honestly think he's the Hall of very good. And even that, I think he may be the Hall of good. I think he won the 2 Super Bowls. I think it was more defense, that great catch by Tyree, the pass to Manningham on the left sideline. I get it. He came through in big moments, no doubt. Can't argue that. Is he the Hall of Famer? No, I would not put him in. I don't think he is. He's not the best of the best.
George, what's the difference between him and Jim Plunkett? Jim Plunkett won 2 Super Bowls, and he has a Super Bowl MVP. He was a Rookie of the Year back in the day with the Patriots, Comeback Player of the Year. Was the first guy to take a wild card team to a Super Bowl and win it against the Philadelphia Eagles back in the day. I mean, I'm with you. I mean, Super Bowls don't define how great a player is. Am I right? That's a team accomplishment. And I think sometimes fans get that jaded. That's like saying to me that you would take Eli Manning over Warren Moon? I wouldn't.
Would anybody take Eli Manning over Dan Marino? He didn't win a Super Bowl.
Never.
I mean, and I've seen people who criticize Marino for that fact. I was like, are you kidding me? Did you watch Marino play? I mean, it's silly. And by the way, and comparing, and they'll bring up stats from the quarterback in the 70s and 80s to the quarterbacks of nowadays. Folks, the game's different. All right, you could kill receivers back in the day, and they wanted to run the ball 40 times a game. Remember, Emmitt Smith back in the day was running the ball 32 times a game. All right, now, he touched the ball 20 times, he might get broken. And I say that facetiously, but it's a rough game. I get it. You want to protect your stars. I understand that. But it's a different game nowadays. It's all built for the passing game. ESPN, the NFL, they want the ball thrown 45, 50 times a game so they can put up the highlights on so you can get 47, 42 football games. It's what they want here. Let's face it, we're bettors here. We like to bet our overs. We want the ball in the air. So everybody wants here, different football games. So comparing stats to Eli Manning to someone like Jim Plunkett or even the Hall of Famers like Roger Staubach, you cannot compare them. Different eras. The game is different here. But I think it's a very good comparison. Eli, I'm not knocking. I'm going to keep saying this. I'm not knocking Eli. Good quarterback. I wouldn't mind if he was quarterback of my team. I personally probably prefer Tony Romo because he just made things exciting. I thought he made players better around him. But once again, I don't think he's a Hall of Famer. I'm not trying to knock the guy. I'm not. I'm really not, but I would not put him in. But I'm admittedly a very tough grader, Dan. I would take people out before I put them back in.
If you were going to take a quarterback from that Dallas Cowboy run the last 20 years, and you had to pick a quarterback, would you take Dak or would you take Tony Romo?
It's close. They both have the same problem, big games. I think Dak chokes in big games. Tony was more reckless. All right, and I think that's a problem there. The reason I go with Romo is
like a Favre, right? Like a Favre.
Well, I was his idol, right? Brett Favre was his idol, and I think he wanted to, I can fit it in there. I can get the ball in there, and he didn't play as smart here. The reason I choose Romo over Dak is this: Romo made players better around him. Romo had no receivers. Everybody's going to Terrell Owens. That's later in his career. He made Miles Austin. Remember, no one even heard of Miles Austin until Romo made him good here. There's a little bit of a difference there, but they're both pretty much the same. For me, it goes back. I go Roger 1, Troy 2. Danny White does not get enough love. He's 3 for me. Thought he was very good here. Romo, Dak. But White, Romo, Dak are probably in the same tier. They're not anywhere near what Roger and Troy were.
The city of Los Angeles has 2 storylines going on, one with the Dodgers, and I'll talk to you a little bit in a few minutes about those Dodgers here, but you have the Rams on the other side. Isn't it wild? You have expectations with Dodgers and Rams now. Is the storyline going into the NFL season, in your opinion, the 2026 Rams, if anybody can beat them, you would agree that's the best roster heading into the season, right?
Yeah. I think that's the team to beat in the NFC without a doubt, right? And they might add Aaron Donald, who might play, might not play. I mean, that's nuts, right? Absolutely. This guy's one of the best players in NFL history, all right? Not just the NFL when he played. He was that good. I don't know what he'll be like. It'll take a couple of years off. I don't know, but he's not going to hurt the team. So, yeah, I think they have a team to beat. The only thing I worry about with the Rams is this. Can Stafford stay healthy? Right? I don't expect him to play 17 games, but can he be healthy going into the playoffs? It's probably all that matters to them. You know, you want to compare it to the Dons, it's the same thing for them, right? Just be healthy going into October. For the Rams, it's just to have their main guys healthy because if you're a fantasy player, they're a stars and scrubs team. They don't have a lot of depth. They have a lot of stars. Those stars get hurt, they could have some problems in the playoffs.
Who do you think is a better division, the NFC North or the NFC West?
I'm going to go North because I don't think the Vikings are bad. All right. I think they have some question marks. Maybe Kyler Murray can return. Funny that he's from the NFC West, right? Maybe he can be that guy again. Maybe he can't. But he's got to be better than what McCarthy was, right? They'll be a decent team. I think the Vikings will be right around. I know there's no such thing as a 500 team in the NFL anymore with 17 games here, but it'll be right around that 8-9 win mark. What are the Cardinals? Anybody have much faith in the Cardinals? No. So that's the difference for me. It may be more top heavy in the NFC West. Like if I was going to, we said the Rams are number 1. Seattle might be number 2 before you get to Green Bay, Chicago, Detroit here. So I can see you going that way, but I'm going to vote the NFC North as the more well-rounded division.
What do you make of what's going on with Baker Mayfield and the Buccaneers? Baker was offered a 2-year contract extension, and it was at 50 reportedly that Jason Light, the general manager, asked, and he said, yeah, no. And here's a guy that's bet on himself before, George, when he was at Texas Tech and Oklahoma. You think that's going to end in a rocky ending there and a bad divorce there in Tampa with Baker Mayfield and the Bucs?
It's very similar to what the Cowboys did with Dak, right? And Jerry caught himself a ton of money because he kept waiting. Tampa wants to do the same thing. They wanted to prove it. Okay, then we'll franchise you next year, which is great. You will save some money here, but it kills your cap, right? Because you can't spread that signing bonus out over 5-6 years, whatever it might be. Do I think it's going to be a divorce eventually? Yeah, I do. But I think it might be a couple of years because, once again, they can franchise him next year and the year after that.
We're going to talk some Major League Baseball with our friend George Kurtz here in a minute, but our friends at Morgan & Morgan, the number 1 injury law firm in all of America for a reason. Folks, they built this company over 25 years ago, Ultimate John Morgan, and there is no firm like it on the planet. I tell you about the family in Pennsylvania that was initially offered $650K, got nearly $30 million in settlement. Or the family in Florida that was offered $350K, and got $12 million in settlement. Go to forthepeople.com/big sales, pound law 529. It's forthepeople.com/big sales or pound law 529. And do me a favor, you tell them Big Sills sent you. Now, wait a second here. Before we go back to George Kurtz, I was told the Dodgers were unstoppable. What's up in L.A.? That's next. We're on SportsGrid. Major League Baseball just comes off the trading deadline, and I was told already, let's just give the World Series trophy already to the Los Angeles Dodgers. Now, they break their 7-game losing streak, but I was told this thing was already wrapped up and we don't really need to play anymore, that this is Dodgersville right now. George Kurtz joins us here. And, George, I don't know, man. Little rocky start since they got Screwball, right? I mean, is it as set in stone as everyone thinks it is that this team's going to win the World Series?
No, it's baseball. All right, you play 162 games. It's set that they're going to win the division because with that starting staff, they can't lose. But in a 5-game series, a 7-game series, you don't know what's going to happen. All right, you just don't. Do I think they're going to get one of the byes? Yes, although I think right now they're not in that bye, by the way. They're in third. That might have changed last night where they won. Somehow they beat Arizona last night. They never should have won that game. Arizona, big choke in that game last night. But everybody got all butt hurt because of the Screwball trade, right? Which, granted, didn't go for as much as we thought, but that's Detroit's fault. All right, they waited too long to trade him. All right, the longer you wait, the less you're going to get. It's Tampa Bay's fault for not offering more. Milwaukee's fault for not offering more. The Dodgers didn't get Screwball because they wanted him or they felt they needed him. They got him because they wanted to keep him away from Milwaukee, keep him away from Atlanta. Teams they're worried about here. You think, Screwball is going to make 4 to 5 important starts for the Dodgers. They don't care what he does now in September. He's not going to help them there. They're going to win that division anyway. But he'll make 4 to 5 starts in October. But the reason why I don't care about this is their rotation is Screwball, Yamamoto, Ohtani, Snell, Glasnow. In October, you only go with 4 starters, Dan. One of those guys isn't starting. So one all-star isn't going to start for you that Screwball's going to replace. How much better is he than that person? And even if you know Ohtani's not going to play, all right, then Screwball's replacing Wroblewski, who made the All-Star teams, pitched very well. He doesn't really help them all that much. They just kept him away from Milwaukee here. But are the Dodgers beatable? Yes, because their bullpen is not great. It's solid, but it's not great. And the hitting is old, Dan. Mookie Betts is not Mookie Betts anymore. Freddie Freeman is not Freddie Freeman. They're not the same player. If you can avoid, this is easier said than done. But if you can avoid Ohtani, avoid the Muncy home run, you can pitch around with Dodgers. You can get maybe win a 3-2, 4-3 game. Not easy. Do I think they're going to win? Yes. All right. But do I think it's a foregone conclusion? No, I don't.
Getting Screwball, do you think that puts Dave Roberts in a position now where he doesn't have to start Ohtani in the postseason? Or do you look at that and say, no, I still want Ohtani in the postseason? Now they're getting Snell back on Tuesday, reportedly, to get back in that rotation there. But it really gives Dave Roberts a lot of options. As you said, you go with 4 starters in a 7-game series. What does Dave Roberts do with Ohtani on the hill?
I don't think it's going to be a Dave Roberts decision. All right. A, I think it's going to be an Ohtani decision. Or B, management. Because they're the ones who got, gazillion dollars tied up in Ohtani. It's going to be their decision on whether or not he should pitch in the postseason or not. I think Ohtani wants to. All right. So I do expect him to. Of the pitchers I just named here, Ohtani, Yamamoto, Snell, Glasnow, Screwball. The one who I think is the odd man out, once again, 4-man rotation in the playoffs would be Glasnow. All right. And that, by the way, this is assuming Snell comes back healthy on Tuesday. We don't know that. That Glasnow comes back healthy. I think he'll be back later on this week, maybe the week after. We don't know that. But if they're all healthy, I think it's Glasnow who's going to go to the bullpen here. Because he pitched pretty well in the bullpen in the playoffs last year. So I think that's how they'll work it out here. I think if Ohtani wants to pitch, he pitches in the playoffs. If he don't, well, then the problem solves itself, right? Then Ohtani's the odd man out here. But I think he wants to pitch. He wants to be that ace. I just think he wants that next kingdom to conquer. He's the best hitter in baseball, so why not be the best pitcher as well? And if you can win a World Series, if you can win a World Series game as a starting pitcher or a couple of playoff games, that pretty much solidifies that as well.
I'd be remiss if I didn't ask a Yankee fan the comments made by Tommy John that were released. Old Timers Day is one of the greatest days in all of Major League Baseball, is seeing those legendary Yankees there at the stadium. And he's obviously in bad health. Just your takeaway, Tommy John, obviously legendary when he was with the Los Angeles Dodgers and the New York Yankees. But your takeaway on Tommy John?
Sad. Seeing that, reading that note yesterday was just like, because as soon as you read it, you realize, he's not going to be with us much longer. Tommy John, by the way, should be in the Hall of Fame. If not for his playing statistics, which are, by the way, borderline anyway, the surgery alone puts you in the Hall of Fame. How can you tell the history of baseball without Tommy John? All right, and that's what the Hall of Fame is, a museum. It's the history of baseball. So I don't know how he's not in there, but sad. It's a tough week for the Yankees. Anyway, if you're an older Yankee fan, Thurman Munson died 47 years ago, a week ago today. So, it's a rough week as it is. So the Tommy John thing yesterday was just surprising. And because you don't really, first you think, oh, just Tommy John saying, hey, congratulations. And you realize, oh, you go further, he's not going to be around much longer. So best to his Tommy John and his family. I was a fan. I definitely think he should be a Hall of Famer, but sad is the word I would use when I read that.
Yeah, you put Bert Blyleven in the Hall of Fame. Tommy John should be in baseball's Hall of Fame as well here. The Brewers, let me go and 73 wins. Did I look that up right the other day where they're the best team? Is that the best team in baseball? They're like the Rancho Cucamonga Junior College baseball team, George. I can't name a guy outside of Christian Yelich on that team, and there they are with 73 wins. It's utterly amazing.
It is. I mean, but this is why we go back to the Skubal thing. They should have gotten Skubal. Remember what was it, 15 years ago when they got Stacey Sabathia to make that run? It didn't quite work out, but it was a great move. They should have done the same thing with Skubal. Mizorowski, Skubal, Harrison. That's not a fun trio to face in the playoffs, boys and girls. I think they might have been that team. So my problem with them is they made some decent moves, all right, that have a deadline. But generally their undoing has been, Dan, in the playoffs, they don't hit home runs. And in the playoffs, when you're facing all these aces, you got to hit the long ball. You have to hit the long ball. And generally they don't. Listen, Yelich can hit the home run. Chourio can hit a home run. Tarango can hit a home run, but they're not home run hitters. It's a little different here. So that's generally been their undoing here. I think they are the best, maybe overall baseball team in the National League. I don't think they're the best playoff team in the National League. And I think that's going to be their problem.
You know, you and I really don't care what goes on in Boston with that Red Sox team, but I got to say, man, they've made everybody look up and go, what the hell is happening up there in Boston? How'd they turn this thing around, George, after a really rough start?
I have no answers for you. All right, I have no idea. I thought they made a major mistake when they fired Cora, because I thought Cora was a really good manager here. But apparently I was wrong. Most of us were wrong, right? We all thought it was a mistake. Good for them. Listen, I may be a Yankee fan, but remember, SportsGrid, we're a betting network. They've made me a lot of money, Dan. All right, because I'm a streak bettor. I kept, okay, hey, you want to keep winning? Lost yesterday, of course, but it was eventually going to end. I do wonder, have they peaked too soon, Dan? It's August 9th. All right, you got 2 months to the playoffs start here. Have they peaked too soon? But right now, they might be the team to beat in the American League.
This is why I love George Kurtz. He sounds like an Italian. They make me money. I love it. Very good, George. I appreciate you very much. How about this, man? One of the greatest promotions ever in college football. We'll hit on it next here on SportsGrid. You know, a lot of football programs in college have to figure out how to handle nil and how to generate some revenue for their football programs. Because, again, not everybody's going to have the economics that, say, the SEC or a Big Ten school has. So if you're not one of those two powerful conferences, or maybe even the ACC, you've got to come up with creative ways on how you can generate revenue for your football program. And the Akron Zips have done it. This is incredible. I had to write this stuff down here. It's now a promotion where, check this out, it's a virtual play calling promotion for season ticket holders. And here are the goodies. You get a pregame press conference as a fan. You're mic'd up with a headset. You've got a play sheet. Then you're actually also in the booth with the coaches, and you get an opportunity to become part of the play calling for that respected football game this coming season. And for the first time in Akron Zips football history, they've sold out all their corporate suites, which is incredible. And this is brilliant. Make the fans feel like they're part of something if they're asked to invest in it. Instead of just writing blank checks, make people feel engaged, that they want to be part of the program and the building of the program. Hey, look, it's very competitive now to build these football programs. And if you don't have the economic resources that, say, Ohio State or Georgia or Auburn or an LSU have, you have to come up with these creative ways of doing this. And they got their corporate suite sold out. Again, like I said, this is a great way of generating nil money and them to be able to pay kids to come and play there in the MAC. It's a great promotion. Anytime that you can get your alumni base involved, I'll give you it, for instance, at Texas A&M, they've got one of the greatest promotions of all time. There is a hotel right across from Franklin Field that they give exclusively to season ticket holders and alum, and it's $25,000 a night if you want to stay in that hotel room for a home game at Kyle Field. You're there from Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. You're spending $75,000 alone on the rooms in that hotel the next time you see a game at Franklin Field between A&M or whomever. That's how they generate money. And this is how many of the SEC teams and Big Ten teams generate money. For Akron to do this, this is a brilliant way for them to be able to get that money, for them to be able to go out and recruit kids to want to come and play for the Zips. I love this. More schools should be involved in this style of promoting. Look, I've said this many times, and I don't know how Miami has been able to get into the conversation of spending the type of money that they spent. This past season, the University of Miami will have a payroll of $46 million. I asked Mario, where has this money come from? You know what he said? Community. We have invested in the community, and people that are alum and also people in the business community in South Florida, they've made it engaging for them to be able to go onto the field, to be in the coaches' boxes, and to come to practice as much as they possibly can for the alum and for the investors, notably the boosters. This is a great way to create that money for you to be able to go out and recruit. Look, in about 5 years, we're going to see a lot of football programs folding up because you're not going to be able to compete. If you're, say, San Diego State or you're San Jose State, how in God's name are you going to be in a room where you're going to be competing with somebody like a Clemson, a Florida State, a Texas A&M, or a Texas? You can't. Look at how competitive it's now getting in the state of Texas. You don't think there's a coincidence when you look at the last couple years of playoff teams that have made it? Texas, SMU, Texas Tech, Texas A&M. Those were all the Southwest Conference football teams from back in the day when they were investing in those football programs. Let's not forget something about SMU. SMU was the very first football program to really go down the lane of this. Hey, we're going to start paying players. And for that, they went on the death penalty. Well, guess what? Everyone that's doing what they did back then is now doing it now. I love this promotion, and kudos to the Akron Zips for getting their boosters and their alum involved in raising money for NIL, for them to be able to go out and recruit and to build their football program. College football is different today. It's a gargantuan business. Look at the revenue that's being generated. Make no mistake about it. Got to be creative if you're going to stay in the game in big-time college football and in big-time sports. One of our favorite people. We love talking sports with him. Fox News' very own Kevin Corke is going to join us. We'll talk to him what's going on in the WNBA and all other sports next year on SportsGrid. You know, one of the storylines going on right now in the WNBA is obviously going on with, you know, the league and how it's being promoted right now and how it's being covered. And the storylines, unfortunately, for the WNBA are not very good. And it's a really good product. We've been watching a lot more of the sport. We've been watching a lot more of how they're able to take these teams now and go into bigger arenas. But unfortunately, as we said in the open of the program, you can't take this league serious any longer. You just can't. When Sophie Cunningham is getting mugged the way she got on the floor, and then you start bringing up race and how it's being covered, it just makes no sense on how it's being covered. Look, the one thing the WNBA was not ready for was this. They were not ready to be covered like a mainstream sport. They have a chance to be the 5th biggest sport in America right now. They have a chance to be covered like a normal sport, and they're not prepared. And it's wild on how the NBA is watching this, and now you're even seeing Adam Silver getting involved in it. It just makes no sense on the storylines that are going around this league when you have such a great product. You know, we've mentioned this before with JY. JY is right. For the first time in nearly 30 years, you got an opportunity to start making money and generating the kind of money that this sport has been dying on the vine with for over 30 years. You got a golden goose in Caitlin Clark, and they don't know what to do with her. You've got personalities in the sport, and you don't know what they do and how to promote them. And you know what we're talking about more than anything else? We're talking about identity politics And on top of that, we're talking about an incompetent commissioner in the sport. Look, leadership matters, man. You've got to have people with great leadership that give you the opportunity to be able to prosper and move forward. And until the NBA dresses this with the WNBA, this is not going to happen here. And I love the fact that we get a chance to talk with my friend Kevin Corke all the time, and we get a chance. And by the way, make sure you check him out on weekends, also on Fox News. Folks, here he is right now, our friend Kevin Corke. And Kevin, I got to ask you, man, I want to get your takeaway on how the WNBA is handling their business right now and how they're handling all these storylines coming out of that sport.
Well, first of all, I just want to say thanks for having me. It's always a pleasure. You're more than just a great, awesome friend. You're a fantastic and important voice. And I want people to know, whether they're just checking in today or if they are used to hearing you. I've known this guy a long time. He's a smart one. Yeah, he can be a knucklehead. We all admit that. But he's a smart guy. And I just love being on your show. Listen, real quick, I just want to say this about the WNBA. My sister, Danielle, you know this, was an outstanding high school and collegiate basketball player. So I've been around the sport for a long time, going all the way back to when she was 12 and she was AAU, and very, very accomplished. I respect greatly the athletes. I played basketball with a couple of them, and they can shoot. They're legit. Like, they really do love the sport. But here's the problem I'm having. Number one, they're not defending the golden goose, if you will. They're not defending Caitlin Clark. They're not doing enough to defend and protect Sophie Cunningham. And when you don't do that, you alienate the casual fan. People like me who would just, yeah, I wouldn't mind checking out a game once in a while. You got to do a better job of that. But there's something else that's missing here. Whenever the league refuses to acknowledge the obvious, like, for example, there are differences between biological men and biological women. If you refuse to at least acknowledge what people know to be so, even if you do so in a very respectful and I think generous way, you tarnish the long term health of the league. And that's something people really have to take seriously. By the way, I think the NBA should do a much better job in collaborating with the WNBA on messaging. You know, and I know, if you want to really own the news cycle, get out in front of big stories, get out ahead of difficult messaging by being proactive, by being humble, by acknowledging when you make mistakes, and promising to do better. People are very forgiving in this country, and I'd like to see the league do a lot better job at managing their image than they're doing right now.
Kevin, and let's go down this lane here. It's almost like this, and you tell me if you disagree or agree here. Look, the African American women that came before and built that league into what the league is today, there's no doubt. Caitlin Clark is not the greatest player in the history of that league. However, she's an important part, like Larry Bird was in 1980 when he came into the league. You had white viewers coming to the league. So I make that comparison. Yeah. I'm not saying Bird's the greatest, one of the greatest, but he was important on getting white viewers to want to go and watch that sport. So at the end of the day here, you know, you've got to sit and you've got to go down the lane of, okay, look, it's almost like they are so in a position right now where they're almost not wanting to insult the players of the past. And I get that. But when you have a golden goose like that, like Kevin was just talking, hopefully we can get him back here, you've got to promote that. Look, Larry Bird and Magic Johnson were one of the most and two of the most important people in the evolution of the NBA. People did not watch the NBA. They were calling it a two-black league until those two men. This is what you had with Bird and Magic. You had greatness, you had Celtics, you had Lakers, and Kev, my point is, I think they're so like worried about insulting the women that came before that they're going almost to an extreme. Am I wrong when I say that?
Well, first of all, I just love that you made the Bird Magic comparison. The truth is, I thought that was fantastic for the league, and you and I are let's just call it for what it is, gentlemen of a certain age. So we remember those days. It was glorious for the league to have a star like Larry Bird, who'd come out of the hick from French Lick, he'd come out of Indiana State. That was really good. That was great for the league. I think having a Caitlin Clark or even a Sophie Cunningham is good for the casual fan. I think it invites more people who otherwise may not have consumed the product, the league itself. If that gets butts in the seats, or as we used to say when I worked at ESPN, and I was down at Disney for a while, they'd say, how do you get heads and beds? How do you fill the resorts? That's all this is. It's great marketing. They're great players, by the way. They're not slouches. Are they the best ever in the case of Caitlin Clark? No, but you know what? She's awfully good. And I'm just disappointed that more players aren't savvy enough to understand that she really helps everybody. And I'll give you a really quick example, if you'll allow me. When Tiger Woods came on the scene in golf, there was a great deal of resentment among some of the older players and patrons, for that matter. Who's this kid? He's not going to come in here and barnstorm this sport. It's been around for hundreds of years. Fine. But you know what helps? That kid brings eyeballs to the TV. He makes it young and interesting. And that elevates everyone. Rising tide for all boats. And the dollars got incredible. Now, that was a long time ago. But what I'm suggesting is the WNBA could learn a lot from what has happened in the past without somehow denigrating what the past greats of the league were able to accomplish.
I completely agree. And that analogy there that you made there with Tiger, if you remember, Fuzzy Zeller wasn't a big fan of Tiger Woods. And, everyone was like, I'm sitting there going, wait a minute, this guy will be the greatest thing ever happened to professional golf. And so, Kev, I want to talk some college sports with you in the next block here. You got a couple seconds?
For you, I got time.
You got it. We're going to do this with Kevin Corke from Fox News. Make sure you check him out. Keep it right here on SportsGrid.
I know you did it. Talk.
I'm innocent.
Got the wrong guy.
It wasn't me. I didn't do anything. Okay, it was me. I did it.
Bringing an owl to an interrogation? That's a power move.
Every time. Yeah.
Hiring America's largest injury law firm for your injury? That's also a power move. Morgan & Morgan, America's largest injury law firm.
How much do you think tanking is hurting the NBA right now, too? And what we're seeing, like we saw with that Jazz and Orlando game a week ago, how much do you think that's hurting the game?
I can't wait until professional sports in the United States adopts a European model, especially like a Premier League model, and they start doing relegation. The day you start doing relegation, everything changes. Everything will change.
Outspoken with Dan Sileo, only on SportsGrid.
Well, I ended up adding this since our show started here, Rohit, but his points prop tonight at 20.5 is the same number from the Iowa State game. That's a bit of a mistake, right? When we consider the gap in opponents here, I think Peterson specifically steps up. He needs to. I think he kind of owes this team a great performance.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
Class is in session. Today, let's talk about the teaser. A teaser is a multi-leg bet where you shift the point spread in your favor. You get better numbers, but every selection has to win. It doesn't matter what you bet if you don't have the insights. Tune into SportsGrid and get ahead of the class.
I know that Florida lost at home to Auburn.
I'm very fortunate at times because I work with many people and I know many people, and they're plugged in sometimes as much as I am. And this guy, Kevin Corke from Fox News, my dear friend, is also plugged in. And he just kind of threw something at me here. And I'll give you a little bit of insight here. What about the University of Miami now making suggestions? And there's conversations going on that Miami may join the Big Ten. What do you make of that?
Couple things. First of all, what congressional lawmakers are trying to do to really make an impact on college sports and to change the way things are right now, I think is hugely important. I think it's an underreported story. People really need to look carefully at what's happened to the sport and where it's going. So that's big. But I think more broadly, Miami going to the Big Ten is massive. It gives the university, in my opinion, it's a strong university. It's AAU. It's got championship pedigree. And I think it would have a massive recruiting advantage, to be candid, if it were to join the Big Ten. And I think that's making some of the bigger players in that conference a little nervous. But I've heard from the people that I know, it's certainly something that would be on the table. And I, for one, would be all for it.
Think about it. It'd be the first time the Big Ten had a flag in the state of Florida.
The great state of Florida, yep. Be massive. And remember this, too, and I say this respectfully. That's a school that can compete across the board. It's not just football. People think, it's Miami football. Great. That's the standard bearer for the university. I'm telling you, the U would be competitive in a lot of sports. It would be great for the conference and great for TV, I think.
Absolutely. The expanding of college sports, Kev, do you like where it's going right now? Where, again, you hear Miami potentially going to the Big Ten. Do you like that it's going to be like maybe potentially two super conferences like people were talking years ago? And maybe that's going to be the smaller schools going away and turning themselves into a one program, either hoop or football. Do you like that and what's happening with college sports?
No, I don't like that. And I'll tell you why. I believe that these middle powers, if you want to use that expression, have every right to participate in the great sport that is college football. It's more than the game. It's community. It's athleticism, it's opportunity, not just academic, but also athletic. I don't want to see just two bigs. That's just me. I want to see the Big 12, and I want to see all these other conferences make it. Now, I will say this. There will come a time when we probably only have four, but as long as we expand the playoff field, I think it could work.
Now, there's an argument going on. SEC or Big Ten? In your opinion? Now you look at the Big Ten, they've won 3 straight national championships in football with 3 different teams. And how about this? They also own the men's and women's national champion in basketball. Best conference right now, Big Ten, SEC.
It's crazy. It's got to be the Big Ten. And I know that's tough for my friends in the South to say. And remember, I come from an SEC family. My daddy from Alabama, my mama from Tennessee. So I get it. I really do. But I would just say this. It is clear the Big Ten is the premier conference in all of college athletics. But just don't forget this. Things are cyclical. They can change over time. And yeah, Indiana is the cat's meow right now, which means there could be another Indiana in another conference not too far down the road. So you just never know. But right now, there's no question. The Big Ten is the premier college sports conference.
Yeah, well, don't let the Alabama slang fool you guys. He went to Harvard as well, so okay. hey, government intervention, Kev. Do you believe that it's needed? I had Luther Campbell on with me yesterday, and one of the reasons he's running as well is that he think he can be a voice there for the 954, in helping college sports. In your opinion, does the government need to be involved in college sports?
My inclination is stay out of it. What was Reagan's old saying? The 9 worst things you want to hear is, "Hi, I'm from the government and I'm here to help," or something like that. I can't remember the exact saying. So in general, I'm suspicious of government intervention. However, I do think sometime, and maybe this is my experience, having been around college athletics as much as I have been, sometimes you do need a good cop to come in there to ensure that it's not just a haves and have-nots, but it's an all access and all availability for everyone. And if we can do something, anything, even if it's small, that's probably a good thing.
Kev, do you think we're ever going to see unionizing with players? Like, I mean, across the board, because if you're going to be an employee of that respected university and you're going to start making money, don't you fall under the state guidelines when it comes to being an employed and an employee? When does that get to a point where you're starting to talk unions?
Right. And that's a good question, too. I, for one, am always suspicious of the union structure because it compels you to make contributions. And if you're an athlete or if you grew up in an athlete's family, trust me when I tell you, a lot of these cats are broke. They certainly were when I was coming up. It was like they barely had money to get home for holiday. They barely had money for food or laundry. Training table wasn't 7 days a week back then. So it's come a long way, but I'm just going to tell you right now, be careful. People want to play around with unions and they can be useful, but I would be suspicious personally just because that can go really far afield of what we're actually trying to do, which is help the athletes, but also enable them to make money for themselves and for their families in their future. And I want to do that, by the way, without being compelled to give thousands and thousands of dollars to a union that may or may not represent my best interest.
Kevin, for you, what is the one thing, all the years covering it and being involved in sports, what would be the one thing that you'd like to see reformed as we move forward and college sports moves forward?
Two things. One, I think we should definitely expand the field for the playoff, just because I think one of the greatest things about college basketball is that one shining moment, because you just never know. And I really believe that if we expand the playoff field, we're going to end up with some shocking upsets and some really interesting times. And frankly, and to me, it makes it more lively to know that more teams can participate. The last thing I would say is I really want to see college sports enable guys to have money after. And what I mean by that is let's not just pay the players, let's set aside money in trusts so that when they come out, whether you graduate or not, you got some money to start your life, because I don't want every guy to graduate or not graduate and have absolutely no money and no education for all those years of hard work.
I'd like to see an annuity set up for these kids, the same way
There
that
you
the
go.
Allen Iverson Reebok annuity, when 35 years down the line, he's going to make himself a whole boatload of money because people
That's
put
right.
some of that money into an annuity. Make sure you catch my friend Kevin Corke on Fox News all the time. Kevin, I love you very much and thank you for doing this.
Anytime.
You got it. Final thoughts next here on SportsGrid. Well, as we ramp up for the 2026 NFL season, it was great to see football on the tube this past Thursday when you got a chance to watch the Hall of Fame game. You get a chance to go out there and watch football again. I know, again, it's not real football, but anytime football is back on your tube, you know you're right around the corner. The thing that I love about the Hall of Fame week is this: you celebrate the past and you put those men into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And then once the game and once the ceremonies are over, we start prepping up for another edition, another chapter in what is America's pastime now. That is pro football. College football as well. That will start up in 3 weeks with week 0 when we're talking TCU and UNC, but it's great. I love the game of football. I have my entire life. It's a game that teaches you many things. It's a game that's the greatest reality television show of all time. This is why fans are transfixed each and every single week. It's the greatest reality show of all time. You don't know what to expect. The 2026 season, hey, everyone's looking at the Los Angeles Rams as a team that is there and in the bullseye for them to go out and win and beat. I think they have the best roster in all of pro football. But how many times have we seen it's about the collective, not about the stars? Go and look at what New England did for those 20 years. You couldn't name a Hall of Fame offensive football player that Tom Brady played with outside of Rob Gronkowski that was a skilled player. Not one. Not one first-round draft choice Tom Brady played with for 20 years. Think about that. No first-round draft choices. The Edelmans, the Amendolas, the Welkers. Even Gronk was a second-round draft choice. You may have the greatest roster, and I've always compared people and tried to explain. Look at what Indianapolis had compared to the Brady era. They had Marvin Harrison. They had Reggie Wayne. They had Marshall Faulk. They had Edgerrin James. They had Peyton Manning. They had the collective stars. But the Patriots had the collective team on both sides of the football. Just because you have the most talent doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be the champion holding a Lombardi trophy at the end of the year. That's what makes pro football so great. You never know. And the league is set up this way. There's always going to be surprises like we saw with Chicago a year ago. Or we saw with what Jacksonville did, rising from the ashes with Liam Cohn taking over and putting Trevor Lawrence on a path that looks like now his career is heading in an upward swing. We'll see. That's what the league is. Pro football is the greatest anticipation sport of all time because we're anticipating what our favorite teams are going to do this coming year. The game of football has taught me a lot. And the game of football is now the number one sport in America for a reason. Fans can't get enough of it. This is why they're talking expanding to 20 games. This is why they're now most likely going to play an 18th game. Why they're going to go overseas. Look at the NFL and how it has grown because of its fans. The only thing that I would say that the NFL always has to be concerned about, let's not forget the people that make this sport great, and that is the fans. These crazy price tags that we have now that fans have to spend to go to football games are being priced out of their own buildings and out of their own passion to be able to go to these games. People from Coca-Cola told me a story about 2 years ago that said that 96% of all NFL fans have actually never been to a football game. Tells you how important television is. Tells you how important the presentation of the sport is and how the league is presented to its fan base. As long as the NFL never loses that, it will always be America's pastime. We look forward to each and every single Thursday, Sunday, and Monday night now, compared to what we used to back in the day when it was Sunday and Monday Night Football. It's truly going to be a great year. Do I have a favorite that I think will win the Super Bowl? I really don't. I have no idea what team is going to be holding that Lombardi trophy at the end of the year. You got your favorites. Obviously, we said the Rams. Kansas City, will they end up coming back? I love that Charger team. Will Kyle Shanahan ever, win a big game? What will Josh Allen do in Buffalo? Lamar Jackson, what's the storyline there with him? As great a football player as he is that guy going to go and do something that needs to be done to make his legacy in the postseason? Same with Josh Allen. The job that Sean Payton's done in Denver. That's going to be a storyline. Bo Nix, who was on like a GI Bill in college when he was at Oregon and Auburn. And then, of course, the guy in Philly who continues to prove me wrong. Will he win another Super Bowl? Will he get his team to another Super Bowl? Will he win another division, Jalen Hurts? These are all storylines that make the NFL the greatest sport in America for a reason. We have no idea on how this is going to play out this year. Injuries, the war of attrition, but there's nothing like pro football. Looking forward to the college football season too, and my Hurricanes. We'll see what happens. Folks, I appreciate you very much. You have yourselves a spectacular rest of your weekend. See you next weekend. Get you on the flip side.